Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. I've just realized I should probably put some music to that countdown because otherwise it's a little bit dry. Just waiting to start. So, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are joining us from. Hello, hello. Hi, Cherry. Drop a comment and let us know if you can hear us okay, and then we will get started. Just click a few things this end. Hi, Heather. Hello, everybody. Lovely to have you here. So, welcome. This is our first official joint live with Jennifer from the Raw Fed Feline. So, hello.
Yay, hello. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much. Hi, David. So, Jen did a live with me about a month and a half ago, I think it was now.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about raw feeding and how to support your cat with it. And we talked a little bit actually about dry food as well. And I spoke to Jen after the live and said that, it was really great to be able to talk to somebody who was cat specific, because there are so many people out there for dogs. There are so many options and information about dogs. And of course, we know that cats are not small dogs. Their nutritional requirements are very different. And I asked Jen if she would come and be live with me monthly, because as you guys may or may not know, I'm all about a holistic approach to cat care. So I talk a lot about energy, emotions, we do the chakra cleanses. I also can work with behavior and things, and nutrition is really an area that I don't have the skills and the expertise. So I feed my boys as best I can. Baby Max is having 2 pieces of kibble before meals at the moment, but hey, he's clearing the plate right now, and that's what is my priority. So I asked Jennifer to come and to join me and to speak to all of you in the community about cats and nutrition. So her brand is the Raw Fed Feline. You can find her on Instagram. She's got a website and she's on Facebook a little bit as well. But we'll talk more about the services and how Jen can support you a bit later. So before I get into it, welcome, my love, and thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you. I'm really excited.
Excellent. So tonight, we are going to talk about the different ways to feed raw. Now, I have to say, when I asked you about topics and you said that to me, I didn't realize that was even such a thing. I was like, different ways to feed raw. Like, surely you either feed it or you don't. And you were like, so let's get started. Tell us, what does that mean, different ways to feed raw?
Yes. So to me, one of the best things about raw feeding is there isn't just one way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There really is a variety of ways to do it. So you can sort of figure out what works best for you, your situation, the limitations you might have in terms of space or even just comfort level and handling raw, what your cat might respond to. So there's a lot of different ways. I think the one that freeze-dried raw, I think, is not as popular in the UK. There's only a couple brands of freeze-dried that I know of. I think it's something that's a bit more popular over here in the US. What's really nice about freeze-dried raw is that you don't need a freezer. So like if you're somebody who lives in a flat or an apartment and you don't have a lot of freezer space, it's shelf stable, it's really light. So it's good if you travel. It's an easy thing to take with you. But the thing that I think is nice about it is if you're somebody who isn't a meat eater yourself, and so you're not handling meat and it kind of grosses you out, you don't like the look of it, and you don't want to touch it or see it. Freeze-dried raw doesn't really look like raw bloody meat, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, it comes in little pellets or bricks, and you just rehydrate it with warm water. That's really the most important thing. It can't be fed dry. It's not like a better kibble that you would just pour in a bowl and feed dry. You really do have to rehydrate it. But once you do, now you have raw food available for your cat, right? Because the freeze drying process, it's not cooking it, it's preserving those nutrients. So it's a really nice way to get started. Like I said, for somebody who's plant-based, it can tend to be a little bit easier on the eyes and what it looks like. Great for travel, great for people who don't have a lot of space. The downside is it tends to be a more expensive way to feed raw, at least here in the US. So I keep some of it in Hazel's rotation for the purposes of traveling, or if there's like a power outage. right? You don't need a freezer. It doesn't have to be stored in the fridge. And so that is a really nice option to sort of have available.
Yeah.
Um,
So can we just talk about freeze dried for a minute? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
You about to go on to the next one then?
Yeah, no, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, can we just talk about freeze dried for a minute? So I think you're right. We can't. I have struggled to find a brander in the UK. So what I've ended up doing is ordering it from the US, which the shipping costs and customs costs is phenomenal.
Yeah,
I'm talking
yeah,
like £80 postage and then an extra £30-40 customs, right?
yeah.
Which makes it very dear. The other option that I've done, which I would love to get your input, and I know a couple of other people that have done this as well, is in the UK we can get freeze dried like treats, right? So for example, and I should have brought it with me, and I can't go now because I got my pajama bottoms on because I've been on calls all day and I've just changed into my comfy bottoms, which I'm not going to submit anybody to see those. Next time I will have the jar. We get different treats and we put a mixture. So we've got a jar of a mixture of freeze dried. So some of it are I love the brand and you can't get them in the UK, Vital Essentials. The duck and the rabbit, like they come as blocks, we cut them up. The other thing we've got is freeze-dried chicken hearts. We've got freeze-dried lamb lung. We've got freeze-dried chicken pieces. We've tried freeze-dried tripe sticks, and the boys are not keen. Very, very chewy, much more for dogs than for cats.
Yeah, yeah.
And freeze-dried lamb's lung, I think. So I basically every couple of days spend, 10 minutes chopping it all up and putting it in a jar. So I'm interested where you said, so two things really. The first is you said about you must add water. So I did try that and baby Max was not keen. Is the water from a moisture perspective or does it do something to the nutrients?
No, and I should sort of specify. So a complete freeze-dried raw food has bone, right? And so if you're feeding it as a meal, plus the fact that it has bone, that has to be, and some manufacturers will say you can feed it dry, but like don't listen to them. Though it has to be rehydrated because you don't want your cat eating a completely dry meal. And between the bone and the dehydration, you'll end up with a very unhappy, constipated cat. Freeze-dried treats, right? Like pieces of chicken breast or chicken heart or lamb lung. There's no bone there and you're just feeding a small amount for treats. And so a lot of people will feed those dry, like as is. And that can actually be helpful as a topper if your cat is sort of missing the crunch of kibble that they were used to. And they're like, I need my crunchies. And so sometimes sprinkling freeze-dried treats like that is a really great way to kind of help entice them to eat other food. So treats don't have to necessarily be rehydrated. They can though. But they don't have to be. But a complete food really, really does.
Excellent. That's a really good point. So I must check because what I know 2/3 of what is in the jar is treats. But I also know that, every now and again, like today, we've had a particularly hot day in the UK and neither of the boys, I've tried both different types of wet raw that we have and they won't eat either of them. I put a bowl of the mixed bits and pieces of freeze dried down and baby Max went straight to it. So it's interesting where you said about, if it's a complete and they've got bone, about constipation, because I do think that that's something that particularly with my two, they go outside. So I have no idea.
You can't always know. Yeah.
Nope. Okay. I'm going to check that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think in the UK, Feline Natural is a freeze-dried brand that's available that I recently learned was available in the UK. I don't know where or how much it is. And then I know there's another one that has freeze-dried goat, actually, which is kind of an interesting novel protein, but I'm not remembering the brand. But I have a link to it. So maybe when we're done, I'll stick the link for that one in the comments for folks.
Yeah, that'd be great. I was just looking actually. Feline. Did you say Feline Natural?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like they're based in New Zealand.
They are. Yeah, and they're a popular, but they make canned food as well as freeze dried, and they're pretty popular in the US. It tends to be a little bit of a pricier brand, but I recently learned it was a freeze dried option in the UK too.
Okay, I'll pop the link there if anybody wants to have a look, and we'll see it, and hopefully they ship to the UK because that's the problem with Vital Essentials. They do the dried minnows, the freeze dried rabbit patties, the duck patties, and they're wonderful. but they don't ship to the US. And the only place I found that does ship to the US, to the UK, sorry, of that brand is Dr. Judy Morgan. Of course, I love Dr. Judy, but
Yes.
the price across the pond is
Yes.
quite a lot.
Prohibitive. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. So freeze dried. What's the sort of situation with that in terms of like leaving it down? Because like when we come on to actual kind of flesh and raw, there are concerns about that in terms, particularly with the weather. What are your thoughts on kind of bacteria growth and things with regards to a wet freeze dried?
I mean, it's still raw food. So you still would want to sort of take the same precautions that you would with any raw food. And I think, Hazel tends to vacuum up her food pretty quickly. So I've never had to worry about it being, set out for long. Um, in general, I think it's important for cats to sort of eat meals and not be in a habit of grazing. So you can kind of leave the food down for 20 minutes. And if they don't eat it, then it gets picked up and put away to the next meal time. So it, really shouldn't be hanging around. And I think for people who live in like really hot places in the world, right? That it's certainly, you have to take that into consideration too. You don't want to leave that sitting out too long at all.
Cool. Okay, just before we move on, so any questions in the chat about the freeze dried? So David says Walker gets both fresh, frozen, and freeze dried. Beautiful. He and I like both. Indeed, we have many brands of freeze dried food and treats. Lovely. Sprout Queen. Oh, Chris says I also feed my cats the Simple Foods Project freeze dried raw in addition to raw. So should I be hydrating? Is that that must be she's in the US? That must be a US brand.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with that brand, but any complete freeze dried raw really should be fed rehydrated. If you're feeding it as a meal, not just sprinkling it on top as a treat. Because truly freeze dried food has even less moisture in it than kibble. Like all of that moisture has been frozen out of it. So it's really important to place it back in. So even without knowing the brand, if you're feeding it as a meal, and then I would rehydrate it for sure.
It's complete. Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Brilliant. Okay. On to the next one. So what's after freeze dried?
Well, you know what? And so a frozen commercial raw would be, and I think David said something about he includes that too. So that's where you buy it frozen, right? And I know in the UK there's Perform, there's Luna and Me, there's Bella and Duke, Nutriment. There's all those ones. Yep, they're really popular ones. Here in the US, Small Batch is really popular. Steve's Quest, Primal, Viva Raw just recently this week came out with a brand new complete frozen raw. So there are a lot of different options. Some are like Viva Raw. You would buy online and it's shipped to your door and frozen. And then others like Primal and Small Batch, Vital Essentials, Steve's, those can typically be found in pet stores where you can purchase them there. And those are super simple. You literally just put how much you want to feed for the next day, put it in your refrigerator overnight, let it thaw. The next morning, you scoop it and put it in your cat's dish. Here you go, kitty. So it really, all of the guesswork is taken out of it. It's all formulated for you. And it really is about thawing and scooping into a dish. So it's really convenient and easy in that way. The thing that sometimes people worry about, so like, for example, Viva Raw, you're going to get it in like a 2-pound package. You're not going to feed 2 pounds. It depends how many cats you have. If you have like 6 cats, okay, you can just probably pop 2 pounds in your fridge and you're going to go through that fast enough. But if you just have 1 or 2 cats, you're not going to use it enough. So you can thaw it, portion it, and refreeze without issue. Like it's okay to thaw and freeze and thaw it again to feed it. So that helps minimize waste. And then you have sort of how much you need to feed for however many cats you have ready to go. So that's super convenient.
What are your thoughts on those in terms of like fiber? Because like particularly like with Perform over here, they are considered probably the most expensive and the top end of the market in terms of kind of quality as well. I know people don't like the fact that they've got farmed products. But what about in terms of like fiber? Because they say in the package you can either have meat or you can have those with meat and bone, or meat, bone, and like ox heart, for example. So a little bit of offal. But I've had questions, and of course, like I said, I can't answer them, not being nutritionally trained. in terms of like fiber, what happens with their cats in terms of fiber for those sorts of diet? Whereas like nutriment, and I know this because we feed them, they've got, salmon oil in there. So you think, okay, there's probably a little bit of lubrication there,
Mhm.
So what are your thoughts when it comes to fiber in pre-made commercial raws?
Whether feeding ones that have them, I want to just make sure I understand your question, or adding some to it, or
What in your experience, what is the best type of fiber that is in those pre-made raws?
hmm. I mean, fiber is one of those things that it's not like a necessity in a cat's diet. Some
Mhm,
cats are fine without adding fiber to it. Some really need it. And
mhm,
some, there's just some benefit in terms of lower gut health. So it's
mhm,
really kind of cat specific in a
mhm,
way.
mhm.
Psyllium husk is a really popular fiber that's used because it's both, because there's two different kinds of fiber, a soluble fiber that helps sort of soften stool, and then
Mhm,
insoluble, which helps kind of bulk it up, and helps like with anal glands and such. So,
mhm, mm,
um, but it tends to be kind of cat specific. And some
yeah,
brands, like here in the US, they'll use a small amount of produce to help with vitamins as well. And
mhm,
so even just including some of that produce, you're going to be including a little bit of fiber in there too.
yeah.
And so then I think it's really, you end up doing, if you can, litter box watch a little bit about how does my cat respond to this?
I miss those
Um,
days.
right? What are things looking like? Do I need to change something here or not?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where people have said to me, when we've done like raw pet medics, within the lives, other lives, that if they were eating, and I know we're going to come on to whole prey and things in a minute, they're outside eating, if baby Max ate the goddamn mice that he brought home to me, I one would be very, very happy, and two, I know that he's getting what's in the tummy in terms of, seeds and grains and digested food and stuff. And I think sometimes there is, a part of me when I look at the Perform sachet, which says that it's a complete food,
Mhm.
and I look at the mouse that baby Max has just brought home, I'm like, how does that measure up?
Mhm.
How can that be a complete balanced diet? Do
Yeah.
you know where I'm coming from?
I do, because I actually think this idea of like complete and balanced is a little bit like of a misnomer, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think that was created by pet food companies to scare people into thinking every single meal you feed your cat has to be 100% complete and balanced according to these numbers that are decades old. And
Yeah.
so, right, and it's not necessarily in looking at a mouse and comparing, because besides, in terms of if there was undigested food in there, but the fur, the feathers, the tendons, there's a lot of animal-based fibers that cats would naturally get that's going to
Yeah.
just keep that system working well too, that isn't included in, most commercial foods. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and none of us eat 100% complete, like, my lunch today was not 100% complete and balanced according to whatever. I'm doing okay.
I love that.
There is this weird idea, but I think it scares people into to feeling like they can't figure out how to feed their cat then, because it's
Yeah.
not complete and balanced according to someone. So,
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah. And what is your perspective on those kind of on pre-made, like the frozen ones, like you said? So like we feed those,
mhm,
I'm not a big fan of touching and feeling with the food
mhm,
and stuff, and when we come on to whole prey, I'll share my experience with those as well. But um is there anything that you would advise to people if they are feeding, a pre-made brand like that, like Nutriment Perform, obviously some of the ones
mhm,
you mentioned about for you guys in the US,
yeah,
that they could top with, that they could support diet with? I mean, or is it really kind of, you know, unique to each cat? Because what we don't want is a cat that gets some sort of deficiency and
sure,
then you've got to then support them and supplement them.
right.
Is there any kind of hints and tips that you could share that would support those sorts of diets?
Two things to think about, I think, when you're
Mm.
feeding commercial raw is don't just feed one brand.
Mhm.
You really want to feed a variety of brands in rotation if you're feeding commercial foods, because that helps even out, because they're not all the same. They don't
Yeah.
have the same number of nutrients. They might have the same, they might right? A lot of those nutrients are ranked by minimum or maximum. And there's a really wide range. So this food might have more of this food has less of this. So feeding a variety kind of helps cover your nutrients. Your cat's not then overexposed to something that maybe isn't so great for them in one particular brand. Helps them if there's supply issues, or
Mm.
helps them not get bored. Like, there's a lot of fabulous reasons to feed a variety, and so you don't want to get stuck on one brand.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing to keep in mind about commercial pre-mades is a lot of them are made at 10% bone because that's what they make dog food at.
Mm-hmm.
But cats often do better with a little less bone,
Okay.
because mice and rats have about 5% bone.
Mm.
And so there's very few prey other than probably a rabbit that have 10% bone that cats would naturally eat. And
Interesting.
so some cats do okay with 10% bone, but for some it can be constipating, and
Mm.
um, just be harder for them to manage.
Yeah.
So again, it's kind of cat specific,
Yeah.
but it's something to kind of keep in mind when you're feeding a commercial pre-made food. And once it's made, in terms of formulated and considered complete, there's not a way to easily dilute that bone content, because then you're diluting
Mm.
all the nutrients. So if it's a complete food, this is how you have to feed it. You can certainly rotate it then with maybe some other foods that have less bone, to try to create some balance overall.
Mm-hmm.
But you have sort of the benefit and the ease and the convenience that it's all made and formulated for you, but that means that's what it is. And
Yeah.
you don't have the capacity to individualize it for your cat in the same way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Lovely. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you. Okay. On to the next one. I love this.
All righty. So the next one would be what I call meat completers. They're the pre-mixed powders. Perform has one. Um,
Okay.
Fellini Complete is another one that the UK used to have, but I don't think they have anymore. Easy Complete is a super popular one in the US. TC Feline, that's a Canadian one, that we can also get in the US. So these are pre-mixed powders that have the ingredients, so that when you add it to meat, you make complete food.
Oh.
And so I liken it to, I like to use the analogy of making a cake. So the commercial foods, the freeze-dried and the frozen raw, that's like going to the bakery and buying a cake. It's been made for you. It's beautiful, it's fabulous, here it is, and you're gonna pay a pretty penny for it because it's
Mm-hmm.
all been made for you. The completer is if you bought a cake mix at the store and you brought it home and you mixed it with water and egg and you poured it in, and you're going to bake it yourself, but it's going to be a delicious cake, and you don't have to be like a fabulous baker to make it, right? Like, you're literally just mixing it up. And that's really what most of these completers. There are some that you have to add meat and liver. Many of them include the liver already. Some have eggshell, some have bone. So you have to kind of sort through which one might be best for your cat, but they're all ridiculously easy. So you're
Right.
literally just mixing meat and water and the powder, and you're like, okay, I just made myself cat food. So it really is easy. And it's how much that one costs kind of depends on the cost of meat where you live and like what meats that you use, right? If you're using kind of, here in the US, like pork and chicken are the cheapest meats. Beef is easily accessible. If you're using those more common meats, you're going to keep your costs down than if you're feeding like rabbit, which tends to be well liked by cats, but very expensive to source here, right? Or venison or something. But you can mix and match different meats, and every meat has its own nutrient profile that works then, and you provide a lot of nice variety that way. But that's a really easy way to make your cat's food, and how a lot of people get started making food.
Never even heard of that. Like, didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, Perform has their complete supplement on their website, and it's a popular one. And a lot of those can be used with cooked or raw meats. Um, I think raw is preferred if you can, because that's how cats would naturally eat. They wouldn't be cooking their little mice over a fire. So if you can do raw, for your cat, that's a really great idea. But they can be used with cooked meats too, and you can work your way to raw if
Oh
needed.
yeah, look at that. Look, I'm just gonna quickly share my screen a second.
Yeah.
So people
Yeah.
can see. So
There
perform.
it is.
Look, I was shopping at Nutriment earlier. I haven't finished my shopping.
There you go.
Oh, look at that. Joint supplement. Oh my goodness. What even is that? Zulac Pro Paste.
I don't know what that one is. No.
No.
That's the complete supplement.
Oh, look at that. Raw meat. I'm not doubting what you're saying. I'm just fascinated. Like,
Yeah.
and whilst we're here, we might as well have a look in case anyone's got any questions. So it's got all the vitamins, minerals, and amino acid. You don't need to add any liver or bones. We've used the chelated minerals. So the amount of sodium due to the cats. Okay. So literally you buy a meat from the supermarket and then I'm gonna stop sharing. And then sprinkle that on top.
I mean,
Mix
it's
it
not
in.
like something you sprinkle, right? Think of it more like a mix, right?
Right.
So it's
Right.
not like a topper, but you're like literally kind of because you want it to be distributed throughout the meat, right?
Right. Okay. And
So
does it have flavor to it? Like would some cats be put off by it?
sure, absolutely. They all have a little bit of different flavors. Any of them that contain liver already tend to have a strong flavor of like a freeze-dried liver. And so cats who like freeze-dried liver treats tend to like those. Um, There's one TC feline, it has krill in it for omegas, and it has like a fishier smell to it. So a cat who likes that, they might really like those. But yeah, they all do have like their own flavor. And anytime you're introducing something new, you want to start slow with the cat to help get them on board.
Yes. And transitioning will definitely be one of the topics that we do
Yes.
live.
Yes, for
What
sure.
are your thoughts on those complete supplements then? Have you ever tried those?
Oh yes, I've used a lot of them. That's kind of how I've used all of these that I've talked about actually, right? Like I'm kind of a baby step person when I'm learning something new. So it was like, bra, what's this? Okay, tried freeze dried. Oh, okay, now I'll try frozen. So I've worked up and down the ladder of feeding them. And my daughter's two cats that I feed for now, they really like they like everything except what I make for Hazel. So I'm always making her food separate because she's kind of a diva. And then I got the other two, and they eat a variety of these things too. But I really like the completers because to me, they're a really nice middle ground between time and money. Because really, when it comes down to raw feeding, these are the two things you're sort of they have a direct inverse relationship most of the time. So if you want it to be really easy to just thaw and scoop, so you're valuing time, you're going to pay more money for those. Or if like, oh, I don't want to spend a lot of money on this, okay, then you're going to be spending a lot of time prepping it and organizing and putting it together yourself. To me, these kind of complete mixes are a really beautiful middle ground where they're less expensive than commercial foods because you're doing some of the work, but they're not so time consuming where you're prepping and cutting up organs and meats and all these things. You're just, most of us can mix up a box of cake mix, right? So it's not complicated. It's really easy. And so I really like that because I think it's a way that a lot of people kind of land on and can feel comfortable in terms of cost and time with raw feed cats.
Beautiful. Okay, well there we go. I've learned something today. Brilliant. On to the next one.
Yes. So I guess I would say the next one is probably as you move into more of DIY, and there's a couple different ways to do that. And if we stay with our cake analogy, right? So recipes would be another one, right? So there are recipes online that have been around for like many years. You can hire a nutritionist to formulate a recipe specifically for you. But that's like if you would open up a cookbook and follow a recipe to bake a cake. Oh, I need to add this much meat and this much liver and this much kidney and this much egg. And you're putting it together based on a recipe. So that's going to take more time. And it's going to take a lot more prep work. When you move into this part of DIY, it really helps to have a lot more freezer space because especially when you're feeding cats. I feel like people who are like feeding big dogs, Like for them to buy 2 pounds of kidney is like, okay, no problem. I'm going to go through that really fast with my 80-pound dogs. Well, when we're feeding 10-pound cats and we need this much kidney, but you have to buy it in a 2-pound package, you're like, what am I going to do with all of this? So it's helpful then to have a freezer so you can portion everything and then keep it in there and use it as you need. But it is a bigger commitment in terms of time, in terms of prepping, in terms of freezing, and then remembering to thaw and put it together.
Mm.
So again, it tends to be cheaper, but you're just putting in more time.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who love to follow recipes and like to make food from scratch in that way, it can be a really nice way to make your cat's food.
Mm-hmm. I guess there's a part to it though where you've got to trust the recipe, or you've got
Yes.
to know that you're creating a balanced diet. There is that, where, like you said, I know before about what is commercial, what is complete.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a point where if you're going to create your own, then it's important to be educated.
Yeah,
Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. When you move into DIY, there is a certain amount of information you need to have, a certain amount of research that you need to do beforehand. Like you don't need to get a PhD in animal nutrition or anything, but you do need to be informed to a certain degree to kind of understand some of the basic concepts of like, yes, they need meat and like it can't, you're just not putting down a piece of meat in front of your cat. That's not what raw feeding is, right? Of course, they have to have some bone or calcium of some kind or liver, or what does that mean? So, yes, that's where a little bit of research and reading and asking a bunch of questions, or hiring a nutritionist, right, to make it for you. If you kind of vet, is this person legit? Because it's not really a protected term, and there's not a lot of regulation about it. But so you want to know who you're getting this from.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing too is, again, like feeding a variety. You wouldn't just say, "Oh, here's this recipe, and this is what I'm going to feed my cat for like ever."
No, we don't eat one meal, do we? We don't eat, like pasta and sauce or what, or cottage pie or a green smoothie or whatever, every meal every day, do we?
Right. Yes, of course. So, it helps build in some safety then, because no recipe is going to be perfect, even if they say it's 100% whatever. No recipe is perfect, and there's new information in the nutrition world all the time where we thought it was complete and now it's maybe not according to this new information. But if you have a basically balanced recipe, I think feeding sorry, I was distracted by the comments. Feeding a variety of recipes or a variety of meats and different organs in that recipe, it just helps balance out the nutritional profile, and you kind of cover your bases that way. And it just creates a bit more safety, I guess, in terms of feeding.
So Sarah's mentioned about a Facebook page. I was going to say to you just a minute ago when you said, find the recipe that that you start to look into recipes and start to get educated. I was going to say, share the Facebook group that you're a part of, because I know that you are an admin, and the content and the support in there is phenomenal. So please mention that while we're here.
Yeah, sure. No, it's Feline Nutrition, and it's Feed Cats Like Cats. And we have a ton of information in our guides about all the different ways to feed raw, and support that.
Talk a little bit about what goes on in the group. I just find a link for everyone.
Sure. Let's see. The basic premise, it's not a raw only group, actually. So it really is, it's a moisture diet only group. So we don't support feeding dry, but we support all the other ways to feed a moisture rich meat-based diet for cats, and raw included, but also canned and tinned and cooked and whole prey and kind of that range. And there's a lot of focus on helping people transition to feeding.
I was going to say that the one thing for me that stood out when I've been in there for a while is how much support there is if you are transitioning, whether that's whichever way that whichever realm that is, whichever part of raw feeding you're bringing in, there is a lot of support to give you as you're doing that. So and also there's a phenomenal amount of resources, and like you said, it's not, also what I love is it's not just UK or not just US. So there is
we've got folks, we've got folks from all over the world, actually, which is always interesting to learn sort of what's available in other places, and it can be really different.
Yeah, for sure. Cherry's a group of that. Cherry's a member of that group. Awesome.
Yes. I love
Brilliant. So, okay, so we've got freeze dried, we've got commercial pre-made frozen, we've got cake mix. I can't remember what did
Yes.
we call that one.
Yeah, a meat completer, right? It was just like the cake mix.
Meat completer. That's not going to stick because I've never heard of it. So it's going to be cake mix.
Cake mix might work then. Yes. Cat food cake mix. Yes.
Okay, so meat complete. And then what was next? So
And then
now
recipe was next,
recipe,
right? So
yes.
following that recipe. And then I think the next one is sort of probably what people see if they follow me on Instagram, sort of the, I do a DIY, but I'm not following a recipe. And I think of this, if I'm sticking with my cake analogy, I don't know if anybody else's grandmothers were this kind of cook, where it would be like, oh, grandma, how did you make this cake? Well, I put in some flour and then I put in some sugar and eggs, and you're like, I don't know, right? It's not like a recipe. It's just kind of putting it together. So
Yep.
that's kind of how I think of Prey Model Raw, where you have your components and you have to have an idea of how much of each that you need, but you're kind of mixing and matching. So I might use goat and pork in one, and then pull in some beef liver, and then some pork kidney, and then some eggs, and some fish. And I'm following a guideline of Prey Model Raw, but I'm not following a recipe, and I'm feeding a lot of variety in that rotation to help provide a lot of nutrients. So it's a little, I'm aware that how I feed Hazel would probably be considered extra, right? Like it's for people who.
It's interesting you say that. So are you comfortable if I share your Instagram page and we
Oh,
could
sure.
talk to you a little bit about, I love what you said about the grandma thing, because I cook like that.
Right? I cook like
my
that. Yes.
Yeah, my ex-husband would say to me, like, how much of this is in there? Like, if you went to cook, or how much you put this? I'm like, I don't need, just put a sprinkle or a dash, or like, cook with intuition. Like, I don't know.
Exactly. And so for some people, that's just like a natural way of doing it. And other people are like, no, that is not going to work for me.
Yeah, that's what. So when he cooked and he would follow a recipe, I'm like, oh no, you don't do that bit there. And he's like, but the recipe said this. I'm like, oh no, you don't do that bit. You do this instead. That's how we have it. And he's like, it's not written in the recipe. I'm like, well, what could I tell you? Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, show my screen.
So and I do think, to me, that's why having a lot of different ways to feed raw is so nice, because it can work for different kinds of people.
Yes. And I think it gives you options as to, like you said, almost like a ladder. You mentioned at the beginning. I love that, actually, because it gives you that. It means that there's always space to grow. There's always something new to try. Now, I appreciate for some people watching that may feel overwhelming, but know that if what you're doing right now is working for you and your cat, you don't necessarily need to make changes. Okay, this isn't about come and you've got to make changes. You've got to try the next thing. We are committed to supporting people as we come together every month from now on, to inform you, to give you support and guidelines and information. And if you're inspired and you want to try something, go for it. But this isn't about saying, like, you must feed this way. Now, whenever I see Jennifer's pages, I'm always like, holy moly, that is not the word I say, but I'm like, oh crumbs, isn't that beautiful? Like, gross, because I'm mostly vegan, but also like beautiful. I'm like, oh, I can dream. I often dream that my boys would eat like this. I really do. And there is part of me that is petrified of doing something like this, because I'm like, oh my God, what if I didn't feed them enough? We'll come on to that in a minute. Second part is, like you said, freezer space, because to buy, that much and break it down time wise, if I could commit to it, when I was committed to it, I think that would be okay. But I just look at these and I find it a little overwhelming. And like you said, perhaps it's because you feed with intuition and the science behind it. Let me see if I don't think I can get them any bigger. Oh, here we go. Okay, so talk us through a plate.
Okay, this is an interesting plate. So this one, I started with a commercial Prey Model Raw grind. So it's not a complete commercial food, but it just has the meat, the bone, and some liver in it. And that's it. So it's not really complete as it is, but it's kind of a nice base. And if somebody doesn't have if their cat doesn't eat whole bone and they don't want to invest in a big grinder and do all that, this is sort of another option of, oh, I can get a PMR grind. Somebody already ground up the bone for me. It's good to go. So I
Okay.
started with that grind, and then because it's at a 10% bone, I wanted to bring that down some. So I added some muscular organs, so the turkey hearts and the tripe there. Plus, it's a nice way for me to hide tripe in there because none of the cats in my house love it. Tripe seems to be a discerning taste. Some
Okay.
cats like it and some do not.
Mm.
So I included some extra of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's turkey, so not a red meat, I included oysters because that adds some zinc to the mix. And I included some organs since it only included liver. So there's some kidney, some spleen, and some pancreas in there, and just not huge amounts, but just enough to kind of round that out. Those kind of organs are kind of like the vitamins of feeding, and so adding those in just kind of helps up that profile. And then the kelp is in there for iodine, and then eggs, because I always include eggs in everything because eggs are fabulous to feed.
Oh, talk a bit about that. I've had questions about that in the past. I've had people berate me because I give my boys raw quail eggs. So
Oh no.
yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, no, eggs are awesome. And right, and all the different kind of eggs, right? Duck eggs, turkey, or I've never had turkey eggs, but duck eggs, chicken, quail. Quail are great because they're like the perfect size.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
They're perfect. But eggs are considered a complete protein. They have choline and biotin and all sorts of fabulous nutrients. They provide some healthy fat.
Yeah.
They're really they're nice. The yolk is really good to help with hairballs. The whites are a nice source of protein. They're just fabulous to include. They
Right.
really are.
Big love for them. I mean,
Yeah.
do you, in fact, you said you include them in every meal, do you?
Yep, sure do. Every batch of food has egg.
Yeah. Because I was worried that I was feeding my boys too much because Leo, oh my goodness, if he won't eat, we've had a few problems the last few weeks. If he won't eat, he will always snarfle a quail egg. Always.
Wow.
In fact, if
Okay.
we haven't got quail egg, even if like last night, my sister has to get them from only one supermarket locally, and she's been away in Amsterdam, so we run out. So I actually had a chicken and got a chicken egg and split it between him and baby Max.
Yeah.
But again, like it's gone in seconds.
Wow.
And if ever I can't get him to eat, I know eggs would be a good thing.
Yeah.
So at one point, we were feeding. He was having a quail egg every night before bed. It was like a treat, not a treat. It was like the routine. And because Leo's a water element cat, the more routine he can have, the better. So when my ex-husband had left, I tried to create routine with him. So he was having it every night before bed. And then I thought, oh, do you know what? I'm starting to get worried. Is this okay? It's the same thing every day. So like just with me, if I was having, a hot chocolate every day or a green smoothie every day, like, is it a bad thing? And then people started to comment about eggs in general, and I got all worried and afraid, and so we stopped feeding it, and he wasn't very happy.
Oh no, I mean, I think one of the biggest things people will bring up about raw eggs in particular is this idea about biotin and avidin, and oh my gosh, you can't feed it raw and only the yolk. However, Mother Nature is really brilliant in what she does, and there's more than enough biotin in the yolk where the avidin of that white is not going to overwhelm that. So it's fine to feed a whole egg raw. You can feed the yolk raw. What you don't want to do is feed just the white raw. If you are feeding just the white, which somebody might do if they had like a cat with kidney disease and they wanted to provide some extra protein and keep phosphorus lower, you would want to cook the whites.
Right.
Because without the yolk there to balance it out, that's when you might have a problem.
I see.
But feeding a raw whole egg or yolk only is totally fine. I think the thing people have to hold in mind, a quail egg is definitely smaller than a chicken egg, right? I wouldn't feed a whole chicken egg at once because you could have really loose poop, which would be really uncomfortable for everybody. But they're great to include, and cats do usually love them.
Good. Okay, that gives me a bit of a phew moment. Yeah, the chicken egg. Let me be clear. The chicken egg went between the two of them, and there was some left over because I was like, I got to give a little something, so I put it in a bowl. made it like it was going to be scrambled egg and kind of,
Yeah.
split it out between them. Baby Max, to be honest, he can take it or leave it. He came home one day with an egg from the God knows where. People are saying to me like, "Oh, it's a snake egg." I'm like, "Oh my God." Anyway, he pierced a hole in it, so I cracked it open, put it on a plate, and he ate it. I'm like, well, circle of life. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't fertilized, but he could take it or leave it. Whereas Leo, I'm looking up there because his picture's up there. He will just, he absolutely loves it.
Yeah,
loves it. Which is interesting, actually, what you said about it. If they have too much, did you say if they have too much of it, or like the chicken egg, they could get diarrhea? Did you say or loose balls?
Yeah.
I wonder if that's why today he's not particularly good for food, because he's only gone up, had 1 or 2 bites, and then walked away. So I wonder if he has perhaps had an upset tummy, or slightly loose. Anyway, that's me thinking out loud. Right, back to the live, Julianne. Sorry.
No, it's Leo is it Baby Max or Leo who has the longer hair?
Baby Max has got the floofy hair, the floofy
He's got
tail.
the floofy hair, because a lot of times people will give some egg yolk in particular to help with like hairballs during shedding, like a really active shedding season, because it just helps. Right, hair should sort of go out the end, not come back up, and so yolk kind of helps move it along.
That's a great tip.
Yeah,
that's a great tip. So touch wood, we haven't dealt with the hairball yet from Baby Max. So, we've just come into, slightly off topic, but we've just come into flea and tick season with a vengeance. So, I am making sure that every time that one of them comes in, if I'm not on a call, I'm getting my brush out, because, I'm trying to catch the ticks before they kind of embed, but also, trying to make sure we don't get a flea infestation. Do you know what I mean? So thankfully at the moment we're doing quite well, but I agree with you. Fur and in fact, fur is fiber, is it not? So it should be going out the other end.
Yes, that's where it should be coming on out. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about one more plate, if you're okay with that. Is there anyone in particular you would like me to share?
It doesn't matter.
Oh, in fact, you were going to talk about
whole prey.
So we talked about oh my God, sorry. I've been on course for the last 4 hours back to back.
Prey model about, Yes.
Let's talk about this one.
Okay, so let's talk about whole prey.
Yes.
So whole prey, from a cat perspective, is how they're designed to eat, right? Small rodents, small birds. This is how nature created them. On the human perspective, it tends to be the hardest one, right? Even though intellectually we can know we have little carnivores in our cats, whether it's dry food or canned food or commercial raw, it is another animal that was killed for our cats to eat. But it obviously hits differently when you see the whole animal, right? And so that is, for some people, that will just be a line that they're not comfortable crossing, and which is fine.
That's okay. That is totally okay.
Right. And then for other people, it's something they work up to and they're curious about it. And other people are like, yeah, I totally want to try it. So I will say whole prey feeding, at least here in the US, I don't know about the pricing in the UK. It tends to be an incredibly expensive way to feed.
Oh, okay.
I don't actually know anybody who feeds exclusively whole prey, and mainly for that reason. It would be cost prohibitive to feed your cat, exclusively whole prey. Okay. So the people who include whole prey, it's sort of including it in the diet. It isn't like typically fed as the whole diet. Hazel will have it for breakfast every day, but then the rest of her food, she's eating other forms of raw. It's the easiest way to feed. Like they're already frozen. All you do is thaw it in your refrigerator overnight, and then you just plop it on a plate and hand it to your cat, and they take care of the rest. So the ease of it is mind-blowingly awesome, which I appreciate about it. And, I think from a nutritional standpoint, everything's included, right? You don't have to worry about any of it, right? Fiber's taken care of. The bones are taken care of, iodine in the little thyroid taken care of. Like it's all, they're getting the blood that they typically wouldn't really get in raw feeding. the other thing is really fabulous about it is to see your cat eat that way, like it makes them happy, right? It releases their little endorphins
Yep.
and
Yep.
clean. It provides a lot of oral health and helps clean their teeth, and it's mentally stimulating because they have to figure out how to eat it, right? Like it
Yep.
requires some mental work on their part. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of lovely benefits to it.
Mm.
And it's not for everybody, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think, you mentioned kind of a ladder about raw feeding, which I think implies like needing to move up. And I would say it's a ladder on its laying down.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Like
Yeah.
it's not like if you are happy feeding freeze dried or your cat is happy feeding freeze dried, awesome.
Yes.
And if you like feeding commercial, frozen, great. Like you don't have to move. It's not a moving up and down the
No, it's
ladder.
not a place to get to. No. I just meant
Yeah,
sometimes it's always something something different you could try. But yeah, lay down.
sure.
Totally love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
I guess to me, what I really want to help support cat parents be open to the idea of feeding their cat raw,
Yeah.
because it really is kind of how nature has designed our little kitties to do, and they benefit from it so much.
Yeah.
Um, I'm aware that that's not for everybody, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't have
Mm,
to feed 100% raw diet for your cat to benefit from raw. You
mm,
might be feeding some canned food, but then you offer some freeze-dried hearts or lamb lung as treats. Or you might be making some cooked food, and you decide, oh yeah, I want to try giving a little chicken wingtip for oral health. Okay, and now they have a little raw meaty bone to help with their teeth. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Mixing and matching and feeding a variety is always encouraged, and I think important for cats diet.
mm.
and it's and I think it's figuring out, again, money, time, the space, freezer, and also like who you are. Like I love cooking, and I like cooking for those I love. So it was sort of natural for me to move into to DIY, because this is a way I express my love for her,
Mhm.
by doing that, and I enjoy it, and I'm confident in the kitchen in that way. For some people who are like, I don't even make my own food. There's no way
Yeah.
I'm making my cats. It's like, no problem. Here's some other options. It's already
Mhm.
made for you. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, to me, yeah, I just think that's a really nice thing, so that you can try to figure out what works for your lifestyle and what feels comfortable and what works for your cat.
Yeah, I love that, and I think you're absolutely right. There is no one size fits all. There is not a
Mhm.
nirvana place to get to. It has to be what works for you and for your cat. And every cat is an individual. So I love where you shared, Jennifer, that you're feeding 3 cats and you're feeding them differently. I think it's great to be honest about that. Like with my two, Baby Max will generally have a bit more wet than Leo. He's been on raw a lot longer though than Baby Max has. But at
Mhm.
times, and I've shared this openly, we've got a little bit of kibble and it's brought back in to support other feeding. Not my ideal, not where I want to be long term. But if it means that I'm getting the boys to clear a plate, then
Mhm.
I forbear that at the moment. But there is this piece around, and this is what I talk about, like with around table ladies. Our energy, our emotions come underneath this as well. So if, like David said, totally understand that he's vegan, whole prey not for him. Absolutely. And you know what? There's no point in doing it because you need to do that. You think you should do that for the cat, or
Mhm.
you think that is what you should be doing, because your energy and emotions you will bring to that is not going to help either of you in that
Mhm.
relationship. So it has to be what you feel comfortable with and what the cat will, what you can support the cat with as well.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so just got a couple of questions before we wrap us up.
Yeah.
So Chris says the one thing she hasn't been able, in fact, can I show this? Yeah, there we go. Check me out, being all professional. The one
Very.
thing I haven't been able to find is a consistent additive is omega, especially if I'm feeding raw rabbit, which she raises. I tried a door beast potency, but even a newly opened bottle smelled rancid. Yeah, so my kitties wouldn't eat the food. I've access to frozen raw sardines used for fish bait in our area, which I feed slightly cooked as an additive, but not sure how many days a week I should add. Are you okay to speak to that one?
Yeah. So, if slightly cooked. So the thing with fish is, you want to treat fish like you would wild game. So which means you'd want to freeze it for at least 3 weeks if you were going to feed it
Oh,
not fully cooked, right? So if you're going to feed it raw, or if you're just like sort of searing the outside, I don't know quite what she means by slightly cooked, and I don't know how long they've been frozen. So she says she has access to frozen raw. So you'd want to make sure it was frozen for at least 3 weeks if you're not cooking it completely. A lot of times raw feeders will use just canned sardines or canned mackerel or herring or anchovy as the fish for the omegas, because then you don't need to worry about any of that. And they're easy, basically. But you can certainly feed it raw if you want. You just want to be mindful about the freezing piece. How many days a week? I mean, in general, you probably only need about, so I'm going to say these in imperial units, but you would generally need around an ounce of fish per about 18 to 20 ounces of food. So I don't, an ounce I think is around 30 grams. Is that right?
Let me get the converter on my phone. I have no idea.
I always have to use that too. I want to say it's around 30 grams.
Okay.
The thing with fish is, it's really nice in a raw diet because it provides both vitamin D and the omegas, and omegas are so important. So I always include fish in each of the batch. But a little goes a long way.
Okay. How much did you say? So 30 grams?
I said around 30. Was I? I said around 30 grams would be a 1 ounce. Is that right?
Yes. 1.05 ounces is 30 grams.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah. So around 30 grams a week-ish.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you. What else we got? Okay. Question from David. What is the recommended amount of raw food given daily to maintain his weight? So, she's transitioning him over. And it's gone really well, but perhaps too well.
This is going to depend on Walker's age. So if Walker and his activity level. So usually raw is fed by percentage of body weight. So as opposed to calories, because every meat and everything is always going to have different calories. And so that can kind of get tedious. So for adults, anywhere from like 2.5 to 4% of body weight, 13 years old, indoor only. So you'd probably want to start at 3%. That's sort of like your standard, kind of where you kind of start with an adult. And then, but if he's still gaining, you could bump it down to 2.5% and see if that works a little bit better for him. You'd also want to take a look at if a lot of the meats that you're feeding are higher fat. You might want to rotate in some leaner meats in there as well. Fat's not a bad thing in a cat diet, but it is more caloric dense. So having both the balance of lean and fatty would be nice.
Awesome. Lovely. Thank you. Okay. Well, I'm going to wrap us up there because otherwise I have a feeling this could turn into a bit of a Q&A, like Jen in the hot seat.
No, that's okay.
We may well do that at some point, but let's have a couple of lives under our belts before we do that.
Sure. No, this is a topic that's so near and dear to my heart that I could talk about it all day. So yes, you should probably wrap me up or I'll keep going.
I love it. And what I love is that this is the second live we've done together and I've learned things again. Last time it was about the muscles. This time, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone that's been here with us this evening. We hope that you've enjoyed it. We have set a schedule. Let me try and remember what it is. What did we say?
I think the 4th Wednesday of the month, we decided.
I think we did. So the 4th Wednesday of the month on the Wednesday, 7 p.m. UK time, which is
2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
So you can come and join us again in a month, peeps. We will be live on the 28th of June. So if you've got any particular topics that you would like us to cover, obviously about raw feeding, please drop it in the comments, tag either of us, let us know. We want to make sure that these sessions, we give you what you guys need to have support. And don't forget the Facebook group that Jennifer mentioned. So if you're not in it already, please head over there. You will find her as one of the admins and a huge amount of support. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for being here. It has been such a pleasure to be with you again. I really hope you've enjoyed it.
I absolutely have. Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Good. Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for being here. I will say goodbye, and I will see you for Energy Insights tomorrow with Pam at 7:30. So enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, and evening, and we will see you next month. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye.